All right. So thank you everybody for joining us for our COVID meetup this week and for indulging in our conversation about ice cream trucks. I hope you all are doing well today. We have a kind of short agenda for today. Again, you're more than welcome to bring up whatever topic you would like to discuss at this meetup, but we're going to start with our 3 deep breaths. We do have to talk about a time change for, oh, I put this for next week only, but actually that's a lie. It's for ever. So a time change for this meetup starting next week. We'll be continuing the reopening discussion and talking a little bit about Governor Bullock's announcement from yesterday about phase 2 starting on June 1st. And then we have some general announcements as well as new resources to highlight to you all. So please do feel free to use the chat box. We'll be monitoring that. And like I said, this is being recorded and we'll make it available afterwards for you all to refer to. Oops. So the first thing that I wanted to do is our 3 deep breaths. I put a picture of this cat here because if you'd like to incorporate some motion, you can do some cat cows along with your breathing in and breathing out. And so a cat cow stretch is just opening up your chest and then curving in upon your chest. So when you're breathing in, you can bring your shoulders back and lift your heart upwards and bring your shoulders down. And when you breathe out, you can bring your shoulders in and move your diaphragm back, kind of like you're sucking your belly button to the back of your spine. So that's totally optional. I like it because it helps me stretch out my back. Otherwise, you can just sit in your chair, make sure your back is straight. Oh my God, I'm sorry, that was my cat. Try and put your feet firmly on the ground and we'll do 3 deep breaths. So breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. And breathe out. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to go over was a time change for the COVID-19 meetups. So starting next week on the 27th, we will actually be doing an Aspen Basics course once a month on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. So we wanted to change the COVID meetup time to another time slot. And the two options that you have are Tuesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. or Thursdays from 3 to 4 p.m. So I created a poll, which hopefully if I click launch, you all can see. So if you could just select which time slot you prefer based off of what we vote here, that will be our new time slot. And then I'm also asking about Girl Scout cookies, which funnily enough, I included this question before our conversation at the start of this meetup. So it was very timely. So go ahead and vote. I'll give maybe 30 more seconds for people to vote, and then I can share the results with everybody. Oh, and Carmen had asked, could the Aspen training be moved instead? And we had discussed that, but it was actually kind of hard to find a time that worked for this training. Joe had actually scheduled this training, I think before COVID hit, and I just forgot about it. So hopefully this won't be too big of an issue changing the time, but I think it would be hard at this point to find another time slot for the Aspen trainings. Okay, I will end the poll and let me share the results. So it looks like Tuesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. will be our new check-in time. And it looks like Samoas and Thin Mints, surprise, surprise, are the most popular Girl Scout cookies.
Ooh, cold from the freezer. That's a good idea. I always forget that. Thanks for putting that in there, Amelia.
So I will be sure to remind people starting next week that our new check-in time will be on Tuesdays from 3 to 4 p.m. But we will also still be recording them in case people aren't able to make that new time. So thank you. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was about phase 2. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at Governor Bullock's press call from yesterday, we do have a link to that later on in this PowerPoint. And I'll also drop in the press release that they released about it. But phase 2 is planning to start on June 1st. And I think the biggest change is that the group size has increased from 10 people to 50 people, but still with social distancing and everything in place. So Tracy, did you want to cover any other points from this announcement?
I did. When I was listening and watching the governor's press release conference, I was kind of thinking about some of the questions that many of you asked about last time. And in particular, thinking about the 14-day quarantine and lifting that for visitors. Right now in phase 1, the governor has asked any out-of-state visitors to please quarantine for 14 days. It's a pretty difficult thing to enforce. And so realistically speaking, I think he is choosing to lift that on June 1st. Part of the reason why he's announcing this is 2 weeks ahead of time is to give people time to prepare, but also because he is trying to put in place some safety measures to help with that. In particular, the state, I suspect, Department of Public Health and Human Services is working with local public health officials to set up surveillance testing for tourists in particular. And so he wants to be able to test frontline workers and even visitors and just kind of monitor COVID-19 and how it's going and whether or not we see a spike because of opening up the borders of Montana. He also is working with those local communities to make sure that they have the resources and supplies that they need. And then also he mentioned in his press release conversation about the idea of if a visitor is found to be positive, kind of being able to put them in quarantine or taking care of that issue to protect as many people as possible. The other thing he talked quite a bit about was contact tracing, which is one of the ways that they've been able to find many of our current active COVID cases. And there are staff members, both locally and at the state level, who will literally contact every single person that someone with COVID-19 has come in contact with and ask them to get tested. And he's significantly ramped up his testing. And so that's a big part of this. He mentioned, and I think we do have some of you who are near the national parks, he mentioned that he is working with the park superintendents and the tribes near those areas to just kind of coordinate. He really did continue to emphasize the importance of following all those safety precautions that are in place. And so Jenny, in her last statement, kind of had a list of things for libraries to check off to kind of prepare as you reopen. And actually most of those, if not all of them, still apply. So the screening for symptoms with employees, encouraging masks, keeping the physical distancing, being able to do regular cleaning, all of that still applies. That hasn't changed with phase 2. The biggest difference really is that group size and the increasing from 10 to 50 people. And so the question that might bring up for you is, could you do any programming or allow for your meeting rooms to be used? And he really strongly encouraged, if you know you were interested in something like that, basically you needed to be able to maintain the physical distancing, and you should work closely with your local public health official to figure out how to do that safely. So I think those were the things I wanted to really pay attention to and mention, because you had talked about that in the last week's COVID-19 check-in. Do any of you have any questions for me? And I might have missed some in chat because I'm not as talented as Amelia at like doing the presentation and monitoring the chat. So if I missed any, let me know.
There hasn't been anything so far.
Right.
And I did put in the press release to about phase 2 in the chat box, so you can take a look at that if you want.
All right, that's all I had, Amelia.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tracy.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing is just continuing the reopening discussion. And I'm glad we were able to go through some of the beginning stuff pretty quickly and open this up for you all to talk with your peers about, again, what has gone well. If you want to put in any successes or any good things that have happened this past week, both library related and non-library related, please do feel free to share. But then also talking about what could use some improvement, what are you still testing out and working through, and then also what new questions or issues have come up in the past week. And also based off of what Tracy just went over with phase 2 plans, if that changes your plans in any way. So feel free to put anything into the chat box, or you can also unmute yourself and talk. So Danny from Lewistown says, Lewistown is not showing itself to be a mask community. Does anyone have suggestions on how to gently create an accepted mask culture? And sort of related, Carly said, I've had quite a few comments about you guys still believing all this. Those are really good questions. I think I've done a little bit of reading about masks and stuff, and maybe just focusing on the wanting to create a safe environment for everyone might be a good way to address it. I mean, I'm sure you all know, but telling someone because this is what someone's told us to do is probably not the best way. So maybe focusing on the idea, the more cooperative aspect of this, and acknowledging that it is inconvenient, acknowledging that, you know, maybe it does make people feel uncomfortable, but, you know, trying to acknowledge the concerns that people might have, but still holding firm on, you know, ultimately we can't make people do anything, but, you know, this is to make sure that we are all safe together. Kelly had asked, is there a way to get data on how many libraries are allowing the public in their buildings? We are very concerned about taking this step. We are looking at starting curbside on Monday. And let's see, Kelly, I do believe that some libraries have updated their listing in that library services map that we started when COVID first hit. So I think there's not a lot of libraries who have opened, and maybe the consultants can speak a little bit more on this, but I do know that a handful of libraries have opened up for limited hours, or for allowing maybe like 5 or 10 people in the library at a time. If you are one of those libraries, please do feel free to chime in and say, yes, our library has opened. And then Kelly, maybe you can save this chat and look at it through there.
So Wadsworth Library is opened, and I haven't had to worry about too many people in the library because there just hasn't been that many, but it's, for the most part, just a normal routine. I mean, everybody kind of comes, they don't stay long. I don't have as many people using the computers, but I'm not allowing anybody under 16 to use them.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure I'm going to let them after the first of the month. I had said I was. I'm not sure what steps I'm taking. And then I just kind of wipe things down, like computer stations and that, if somebody does use the computer.
Awesome. Thanks, Nancy. And that was Nancy in Wadsworth. Brenda from Twin Bridges, she asked, where do I go again to update hours? And I believe you can do it directly from that map link that Tracy put into the chat box. If that's incorrect, please do correct me.
No, I don't think so. I have to go
okay.
find it every time. It's not an easy URL to remember, so I will look for that and post it in the chat.
Cool. And let's see, Karen in Madison Valley is open a few hours this week. Generally, people were very courteous and respectful of distancing. Harlem Public Library has opened. There's still no known cases reported in Blaine County. And jumping up a little bit, Cindy had asked, I'm wondering what the non-confrontational approach to reminding folks about the 6 feet guideline. I see so many well-intentioned staff and community members standing too close or not moving out of the way when passing next to people. So if you have any suggestions on that. Oh, sorry, was someone about to talk?
Oh, I was just going to say I have seen so many pictures of pool noodles being used to deal with this in many situations. And then the signs on the floor, that kind of thing, it depends on where you are. Like in the grocery store, I just walk around people farther. If they're trying to stand too close to me, I just move away from them. So that's a hard one because people don't always get it.
Yeah, and back to Cindy's question, it's so hard. It's so much easier, of course, to monitor your own behavior. And it's so hard to talk to other people and to feel like you're policing their behavior in some way. Cindy, maybe a way that you can do it if you are part of a larger group and you see people, I think it's easier if you're part of a group to be like, hey, do you guys mind if we just take a couple steps back and spread out a bit, just to make sure that we're adhering. And I think if you model that behavior, at least it'll put it a little bit more in the forefront of people's minds, even though they might not do it themselves right away. But it might just have to be leading through example and maybe at least reminding your staff. I think asking them to take that initiative when they're talking with community members, that might be a way to approach it. There's a lot of chat. So Val said, we're open, must have a face covering, must wash hands, limit of 8 people. Conrad is open 9 to 4 every day, 15-minute time limit. People have been great. Lots of Clorox wipes and Purell. Mark in Bitterroot, we are letting 4 people in at a time for a half hour each and hoping to expand that significantly beginning with phase 2, if not sooner. Our county health department recommended half capacity, sparse seating and layout to ensure social distancing and requiring masks. So far it's worked out well. Conrad has a limit of 10 people, including staff. Rhea from Stillwater, we are open 10 to 1, a limit of 10 people. Starla in Hot Springs, our board has decided masks are not required until there is a confirmed case in the counter. We've set up a poster-sized sign informing the public. The sign also states that patrons are responsible for their own safety. And then Rhea said they're 10 to 1 with a limit of 10 people, but still 9 to 4 by appointment as well. Cindy says, I have no problem monitoring my own behavior, have no control over others. Yes. Nancy from Laurel said they opened last week to regular foot traffic, limited to 10 people at a time. Computer use is limited, with only 3 of 12 available for patrons. Some wear masks, some don't, but staff do. Social distancing is working great here. They offer limited hours while still offering curbside. As far as ensuring social distancing among patrons, this is Mark from Bitterroot. As long as masks are being worn by our county health department, are being worn. Our county health department viewed this as being worthy of a gentle reminder, but not as urgent as someone using the library without a mask. So that could be a good point. Maybe, yeah, if you have a mask and people who have masks are talking together, as the county health person said, that's not as urgent as people who don't have masks who are in close quarters talking together. And then Tracy just put in the survey link for updating your library status. So if you want to, it's that survey123.arcgis.com. So feel free to click on that and update your library if that applies to you. And then Kathy, is this Kathy from Valier, I think? We are open regular hours, 10 folks. Yes, Kathy from Valier. Leaving room between computers, moved a lot of chairs to the back room. So yes. I hope I addressed all the questions that had come up.
And I was kind of multitasking there, Amelia, but I think Sunny and Moore asked about, could it be a legal issue to require masks? And one of the things that county attorneys have said, and Jenny kind of checked with the state library's attorney as well, is that requiring masks does fall within the authority of the board. And so it is within the right of the board, the library board, to decide to require masks to use the library. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that's what you meant. I just wanted to make sure I just did. Go ahead.
Sorry, this is Danny from Lewistown. I had the mask question. I've been talking to our county attorney, and he stated that if you kind of wrap it into public health rules for your institution, that's probably the best way to do it. So that's what we were going to try to do. But again, he said the whole thing with not handing out masks, but just asking people to do that. So those are kind of the legal issues that we've seen. But again, no one in Lewistown really wants to wear masks. So we would probably see significant pushback if we pushed hard on the community.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing, Danny.
And I think, because I've been thinking about this as well, because there are clearly strong opinions on it. And I know some people have said, well, if a person's vulnerable, they can stay home. But some people are not vulnerable. Like, I'm not really in the vulnerable category, but I live with someone who is. And so I wonder if we could word it as, you know, those folks maybe can have to stay home or have the choice, but you must realize that there might be other people who are working right now, or, you know, have to carry on with their daily lives, who live with someone who's vulnerable and they are worried or concerned about bringing it home. You know, kind of like, I don't know if that would work, but I've wondered if, I've thought maybe I might try that if I run into it.
I think you can also say things like, if someone's coming into your library without a mask and you are all wearing masks, you can say things like, for the safety of our staff and other people in the library, we're asking people to wear masks. And if they don't have one or they don't want to, you can probably ask them to just wait outside. I'll go get your books for you and bring them to you. You could kind of work it that way. But I think, like Danny said, going with what your local health department is saying, that's a good way to at least bring that up, that our local health department is saying this or recommending this, and we're following their guidelines, and putting it that way too. I kind of recommend that.
And then also kind of, you know, presenting it as like just like it's option 1, you wear a mask and you come in. Option 2, you stay outside and we'll bring whatever you need to you.
Right.
I think, you know, obviously I don't think anyone wants to like get into a debate about this, but, you know, just being like, I'm so sorry, I totally understand why, you know, this might make you uncomfortable. This is policy though, so these are your options and please pick one to do. And I think that might also help at least reduce the scope of debatable options in that interaction. There have been a couple of comments. Mark said that the county health department also noted that if people are part of a family unit, ensuring social distancing inside the library is kind of a moot point. Or if people two people rode to the library together in the same vehicle, and then being closer than 6 feet is also closing the barn door after the horse is out. There's only so much we can do to make people respect their health. So that's a really good point. And Mark, I think you are one of the libraries that does require masks in the library. So if people have questions about that, well, maybe Mark will confirm this first before I volunteer him to talk to other people. But I think he's one of the libraries that has that policy. So if anyone has questions about that, please ask him, unless he's not the library I'm thinking of. And then Chloe, and I'm not sure what library you're from, Chloe, I think if you provide masks in a safe way, then there won't be legal issues, and people without access to masks will not be disproportionately affected by that requirement. And then Gil from Belgrade said, are people who are requiring masks including all children in their requirement? That's a good question.
The guidelines I've heard for children is, well, certainly children under 2 should not wear a mask. I don't know about older than that. If you need to require that, that'd be kind of, I don't know, tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sunny said people are so lax that it's not in our county, which worries me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and that's, I think, also a tricky thing, because Montana has been lucky in that we haven't been as affected as other places. But, you know, I think it's because we've been careful. So that's also kind of a difficult thing to talk about. Starla said, we're going to close for the town's Homesteader Days, second weekend in June, just not worth the risk. That's a really great point. Val said, in our epidemic policy, we stated face coverings, mask, bandana, or scarf. If patrons don't have a face covering, we ask them to wait outside. I printed a great graphic explaining the chance of transmission probability with and without masks, not an issue requiring as far as county health or county attorney. Val, would you actually mind sharing that graphic if you have it? Maybe dropping that in the chat box or emailing that to one of the state library staff, and we can share that. That might be helpful. And then yes, Mark is a library that requires masks. So far it's gone well, and our city attorney backed us up on requiring. Health department says it's pretty much a must for us and gives staff lots of peace of mind in regard to safety. I think that's really great. It is so important that staff feel comfortable at work and that their safety is a priority, as well as patrons. And yeah, I think, Pam, you said it's important for staff to feel safe. I think that's right. An important thing to bring up. You know, I think we're all so great about wanting to help our community, but I think it's also important for all of us to take space and to be comfortable with the space that we're taking. And it is okay for us to want to feel safe in our workplaces. So don't feel guilty or bad about wanting that to be a part of your work environment.
And I think when you present it more of, you know, for the safety of our staff, people who are coming into the library, usually, you know, they love your staff and they don't want to jeopardize your staff. So I think if you do it that way, it puts a little bit different focus on it, and people are a little more accepting and understanding of, oh, it's, you know, it's for the staff safety and the safety of other people or the staff family. You know, some staff members have family members that they're trying to protect. So I think when you focus on it that way, instead of you have got to wear a mask to come in here, which is more confrontational, I think you get better results when you just try to do the safety side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? And it seems like there have been a few actually quite a few libraries who have opened up, and people have reacted quite well to coming in and making sure that they're respecting social distancing. So that's really great. Trudy asked, for those now open, are you still doing book quarantine? And I think last week that definitely was still the case. People were still doing at least 72 hours. And then Starla said masks are becoming a big issue in our town. A great division. And yes, so people are saying yes, wiping down with a Clorox wipe and 72 hours in quarantine. Um, oh, and I forgot to put this in the link. There was, I think Kara had shared something about the Realm project. I don't think they have any definitive data, but they're starting to do. Actually, I shouldn't say any. I don't remember exactly what it said. Does anyone remember what?
Yeah, her message was there are some studies being done, and when there are results, then they're going to share them. And I think her comment was that we're just putting out the results for information, and then libraries are going to be taking that information and making their own decisions. I'm pretty sure that's what she said. Thank you, Kara.
IMLS is doing a study with a scientific research organization called Battelle, and they are testing how long the virus is viable on various surfaces, such as Mylar cover, a paperback, regular piece of paper, a DVD case, and so on. And they just started that testing last week, I believe, and they expect to have some data in about a month. And so when we have that data available, we will share it so that you can incorporate that into your own local policy decisions as to how long you want to quarantine materials or how to process those materials.
Awesome. Thanks, Kara. And yes, so there's been a few more comments about quarantining. So Trudy, I hope that answers your question. If you have any more specific questions, please do feel free to ask as well. Any other questions? And yes, Trudy says, we planned on doing book quarantine, but it's nice to tell patrons we're not alone, for sure. Any other issues, questions, things like that? Decisions that people are hoping to make? Karen had asked any comments on siloing. And I'm actually not quite sure what siloing is, Karen, if you don't mind elaborating. Unless someone else knows what that is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very faintly.
Sorry about that. So our books in our sharing group are all staying at our home libraries. I wondered if we're not sharing yet. I wondered if anyone else is starting to share within their groups, or are they still holding their books?
Okay, great. And in case you were a little bit faint, so I'll just repeat your question. Karen was wondering about sharing groups, and people currently are keeping their books at their library. So they're wondering if other sharing groups are starting to circulate. And Brenda had said we're ready to unsilo. And Kara, sorry.
Amelia, this is Kylie.
Okay.
With the Montana Shared Catalog. For Montana Shared Catalog libraries, in terms of unsiloing with the backend configuration, we kind of have to do everyone all at once. We can't do some folks being unsiloed while others not being unsiloed. So I know Amy is not on this meeting right now, but yeah, if you have questions, oh, I see there are some comments. Let me.
Sorry.
Amy is here.
Oh, yeah, Amy is here. Okay, good.
I just stepped away. My phone has been ringing off the hook, but I'm back now. And I was like, oh no, Kylie's talking right at this moment.
Yeah, I know. I felt kind of like, oh no, Amy's not here. So I'm going to let you go.
So the question was about the unsiloing for the sharing groups, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be all libraries all at once. We can't do like, oh, these 5 libraries are ready to unsilo, so we'll turn them on, just because of the way the configuration is on the back end. So in order to make that work, all the libraries in the sharing group basically need to be at the same level of ready to receive and send crates and ready to, you know, work at whatever service level they've agreed is acceptable. We can't just turn it on for a few libraries in a group just because of the way of the configuration. And so in order not to pressure those libraries who are a little bit, you know, for whatever reason, they're in a bigger town, they've had more cases, they're just not ready to open that back up yet. We're waiting for, everybody has to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
If that answers the questions.
Yes. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
And Brenda had mentioned, I thought we were going to have a separate meeting for the sharing group, which, I mean, I think that's probably a great conversation to start having and checking in with people to see where they're all at. And Karen said, I was just wondering what other libraries were thinking as acceptable. So just kind of checking in to see how people are feeling. Let's see. And Starla had made a comment. I had a lady tell me that the reason I had anxiety and a mask was because I was breathing carbon dioxide. I assured her that my mask was not plastic and not super glued to my face. And that's the kind of logic that's going around. And that, I think that's, you know, I think that's, you know, something that is happening these days, and there's not much that we can necessarily change about it. But regardless of people's internal logic, that doesn't change facts and science and data. And I think you can still sort of say, well, you know, I understand why you might feel that way, but this is still policy and something that we're going to stick to. So that's it. That's a tough thing to have to deal with, Starla, though. So let's see. And then Mark had asked, do we have any idea when all partner libraries will be back together?
So for the partners and the Gallatin County sharing group and the Four Rivers sharing group, we will probably be scheduling some meetings for another online meeting for all of you sometime in the near future to get some of that worked out. Just so that, you know, we don't take over this meeting with those discussions. I know that I've seen some emails going back and forth. So we will probably schedule more meetings for those sharing groups, and we will let you all know when that happens.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Any other questions? Comments? And also just a reminder, you can save the chat if you would like. I've found, especially when going back over chats from past weeks, there's a lot of really great information in here. So if you just go into your chat box, there's a little file button on the right, and then a little ellipse menu next to the file button. If you click on that, it gives you more options, and then you can click Save As. So you can save the chat box as a text file, in case you would like that. Mitch says, danger. If you are the host, it saves your private chats. Ask me how I know. Oh, thanks for letting me know, Mitch. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move on. Please do put in anything else into the chat box if you have any other questions, but we'll go on to some of the announcements and some of the new resources to share with you all. So you guys might have noticed that there have been some emails forwarded on Wired about federal grant programs, state grant programs, other kind of important announcements. And so this is just a reminder to you all that, you know, feel free to keep an eye out for those things. We'll be forwarding, state library staff will be forwarding what we receive that might seem applicable to your communities. And feel free to communicate that sort of information to your communities as well. This was just something that came up in a recent meeting when we were talking about, I think Bullock had announced an additional vast multi-million dollar sum in additional grants, and wondering how much awareness there was over that program. So I've included the news.mt.gov link on here because it's pretty much everything that is happening in the state, but they do include those sorts of announcements on this website. And so this would just be a great place to check back in on. And then I also I forgot to put that in the PowerPoint, but there is the Joint Information Center from the covid19.mt.gov website. And so that has, especially if people are asking for information about COVID, that has all the stuff that the government has made comments on. So just a reminder, there is a lot of aid, especially that's starting to come through, and you never know, some people might be getting it from some sources, but the library feed might be the feed that somebody who really needs this aid is looking through. So we also have some new resources for you. So there is the People's Connect Institute webinars, and I believe Joe has done a lot of great work to organize these. Joe, did you want to talk a little bit about these? Although maybe Joe's not online anymore. But these are different webinars organized every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. I believe they're all on.
Yeah, and I got my mic thing. Sorry, I got kicked off, so I'm on my phone now. Yeah, so part of our attempt to keep sending you lots of good and opportunities to get your professional development, since everybody's doing that, we licensed these webinars from Andrew Sanderbeck, who some of you guys know, and his institution, People's Connect Institute. So there's a webinar a week, and we are licensed through the end of July. And so you have to go to Aspen and register there, and then you'll get a link from me to register again for the WebEx webinar. We just have to do that to protect access to the webinars, given our contract. So it's really great content. And so just encouraging you to register if you want to either attend or to receive a link to the recording. Either way, register in Aspen, and you'll get an email from me the morning of the event. I was a little, it was a little messed up this morning, so I apologize for some of you guys who got that email kind of late, but I'll get it together by next week, I promise.
You're doing great, Joe.
Not really, today was kind of a bad day. I'll recover.
Oh, and Val just put the infographic about transmission of COVID with and without masks into the chat box. So feel free to download that if you are interested in communicating that to your patrons. There's also an Aspen Basics course that we are starting next Wednesday on the 27th. It is there's going to be one session a month. And I believe those are all listed in Aspen as well. And it will cover different topics related to Aspen. So if you're still having some issues, or you just really would like to do a deep dive into everything Aspen, feel free to sign up for any of the topics or all the topics. And we'd be happy to have you join us. Each session will be led by a different state library staff person and has a different topic. So feel free to take a look and see which one catches your eye.
Yeah, it's also pretty basic information. There's a short demo at the beginning, and then you'll have an opportunity, people have an opportunity offline, not being recorded, to kind of practice some things with our knowledgeable staff helping you along. So it should be super fun, and each one you're welcome to just tune in for the demo and leave, or watch for all those demos to get posted onto our Vimeo channel too. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping at the very end there'll be handouts at every session that will have a kind of complete intro to or basics Aspen course that you can hand to a new staff person and say, watch these 6 videos and use these handouts, and pretty much people will be good to go. So
yeah. You can have a
yeah,
Spider-Man moment and be like, with great power comes great responsibility.
I have a question on the Aspen's course. I'm trying to encourage at least one of my board, if not all of them, to take these courses. And I did that last night at our board meeting. My question is do they have to have an Aspen account to even, to be able to register or do any of this?
They don't have to have an Aspen account to tune in and watch. And because the link that's listed on the page is kind of open, it's not protected. You don't have to be logged in to see the link to the class. The thing is that the very first class is going to talk about how you get that account. How the ePass works, and people have a chance to practice that. So, I would encourage them to take a look at that, and to do anything else in Aspen, to like register to attend it, you have to be logged in, but you don't have to register for that one in order to attend it. You can just click on the link.
Okay. Well, maybe that's what I'll try and push on them, is at least take this one and then find out how to register.
Right. We have there's so many questions that come up around the ePass and how to get logged in. We think based on the feedback we're getting logged into Aspen the first time, it is kind of like the hardest thing to do in Aspen. Once you've kind of gotten over that, the rest of it is a whole lot easier. So we know it's people don't necessarily like to sign up with state government for accounts and things. There's a lot of reasons why it might not work, but they can definitely view it. They do not need to. They can make a decision later whether or not to get a login.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Another resource is Coursera. So Coursera has actually released a workforce recovery resource for patrons, and access is free for the next 6 months. And let me actually drop that link into the chat box before I forget. And I believe it's a series of classes that they have.
A very large number of classes produced and developed by top-rate universities across the country, and all kinds of different topics related to workforce training, certification, getting some training in a new job area. And there is some good material there for librarians as well. The state library, we created an account with them, and I just talked with their staff yesterday, and we're going to be kind of exploring this deeper. But any library can create an administrative account with them and offer these courses to your patrons for free through the end of the calendar year. And it's a very celebrated resource. It's kind of a big deal that they've made this available for workforce recovery. It's pretty easy to sign up. You don't have to prove that you're using these in a certain way. And pretty much they've considered every library and public library to automatically be a legitimate workforce recovery partner. And so it's something you can put on your website. You can offer to people who come into your library, as we expect some people are not going to get their jobs back and may be looking at retraining or looking for an opportunity to retrain. So
awesome. Thanks, Joe.
We'll have more information about it. I'm just really starting to learn about it, but I wanted to get the information out there right away. For some of you, I know have already taken courses from them, so you're probably more familiar than I am.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then for the libraries that have mobile hotspots or are participating in the mobile hotspot program, Joe has just created a press release template, and there are some logos that you can use in your publicity for the mobile hotspot program. So just wanted to draw your attention to that, and I will drop that link into the chat box as well. Hotspot webpage. And then here are some new COVID-related resources that we've collected over the past week. So for the general resources guide, we've added these following resources. The School Library Journal, I didn't know about this, has actually created a giant Google Doc with all of the COVID-19 publisher information. So all of the companies who have said, yes, you can read our stories for story time and record them or use Instagram Live or whatever. They've compiled that all in one place and put it into a Google Doc there. As the situation has changed, I think a lot of companies have said through the end of the summer is when these temporary licenses or permissions will exist. So hopefully they'll be updating this document as things change. But this is a great place to start if you are looking for resources and books to potentially use with your programming. So let me put that into the SLJ COVID-19 publisher document. This next resource is, I believe this is from Pam, but it's about marketing and all kinds of marketing ideas for libraries and communicating new policies and procedures. So especially as things are changing, as you all are deciding on your policies and as we are moving into phase 2 of reopening, figuring out how to communicate all of that with everybody. This is another resource to help with that. And Pam, I forgot, we were supposed to talk a little bit about communication earlier. If you want to mention anything now, feel free to.
If I want to communicate anything now?
Yes.
Yeah, just a couple little things, especially after the governor's announcement yesterday when we're going to be moving into phase 2 and things are going to be opening up and tourists are going to be coming more often, and it's not unusual for tourists to stop at the library to look for information. So you might have people from outside Montana who aren't familiar with some of the rules that we've had in place already. So you want to, I think, start thinking about how can you get that information out so that anybody who's coming to town and might be coming to the library could at least know what you expect. So if you have really simple signage, don't get complicated. Don't put all the rules and regulations up. Just keep things really simple and help your staff. If you have, several people on staff, help them know what are your key points that you want to communicate to people. What are the key things you want to just repeat to people all the time? And you're going to have to repeat them over and over because people need to hear things more than once. And it's going to seem really repetitive to you, but it could be the first time anyone's heard something like this. So you just want to keep that in mind, to keep things really simple, keep them really direct. Like we talked about earlier about, are you going to require masks or not, but have that information out there. And if you are one of those, just be able to fall back on our board has this policy or our local health department has this policy and we're following their policy, and we'll work with you. If you want to stay outside, we'll get your books, whatever. Just emphasize the safety part of things, and people are more cooperative. And be thinking about, if you have a visitor center in town, maybe you can put some information out there because that's where people might be stopping to look around for things. So if you're open, you can put that there. If you're only having curbside service, put that information out there. And also think about how can you get to different groups. If you have like senior citizens in your town where they're not using Facebook or they're not on social media, how can you get that information out to them? Also, like if you have Meals on Wheels or something, you can put flyers out. And I did read a really good suggestion. If you are checking things out or people are placing holds, you can put little reminders on those receipts, especially if you're a shared catalog library. You can put little messages on all your receipts and hold slips if you have something specific you want to get out there. So that was kind of the communication tips for this time, anyway, that I came up with.
Awesome. Thanks, Pam.
You bet.
And it has logged me out of my
oh no,
my thing. So I'm just going to share my actual screen. Haha. Hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, and the next resource we wanted to show you was the Small Rural and Independent Libraries mini conference that's happening on June 17th. So where did my chat box go? I'm putting the Eventbrite link in here so you can register for it. It's free. It's from 10 to 1 p.m. Mountain Time on the 17th, June 17th. And they have a variety of topics. And you can register to attend live, or you can register and get the recordings afterwards. So just letting you know that this is happening and might be applicable to a lot of what you all are doing.
Are you sure about the time, Amelia? My reading would be 1 to 4.
Wait, Pacific time. Yeah, you're right. I went the wrong way.
I always have problems with those times. So
like, where
so
are
I'm
we?
watching. Yeah, it's like.
Sorry about that. I meant 1 to 4 p.m. Thanks, Suzanne.
Yeah.
When you sign up, I think it even gives you the option of show it in my time zone. And
Yes.
then you get
That's a good thing, because we
I
have too
know.
many time zones to try to balance.
I don't know where I
Oh,
am.
that's
Yeah.
funny. So don't listen to me. Listen to Suzanne. It's 1 to 4 p.m. on June 17th. Thank you, Suzanne.
I know, because I've made those
Yeah,
mistakes
exactly.
before.
And then these next resources are in, I know this is still in the general guide. Someone had sent me a magic show person. I forget his name. Daniel Lusk. He's a magician who normally does a ton of summer reading and summer performances, but he's actually got online performances that he can do. But this is his website. If you scroll down here, there is a free video here for your Facebook page. So you can either go to his page and share it from there, or you can also download the video yourself and then share it wherever you like. It's about 12 minutes long. I watched it. It was very cute. I enjoy a good magic show. And he talks a little bit about, he does some tricks. He talks to the kids, and he talks about like why it's important to wash your hands and things like that. And it's a great little preview. So you can feel free to share this 12-minute clip with people, or you can also contact Daniel yourself and book him for a performance with your library. So we'll put that into the chat box. And then there is also a webinar from the National Networks of Library of Medicine, the Introduction to Mindfulness, Nourishing Ourselves in These Times. So this is a webinar NNLM is hosting to talk about mindfulness and staying grounded and trying to manage all of our anxieties and existential dread in these times. So this is happening on the 27th. It is 1 p.m. Central Time, which is noon Mountain Time, I believe. And they are, as you can see here, due to high demand, they're only accepting up to 700 registrations, but only 500 people will be able to attend live. So I have no idea where they are with their registrations, but feel free to register and attend if you like. So Introduction to Mindfulness. And then this is the press release page for phase 2, which I think I added earlier, but I'll just drop it in there again. And then if you weren't able to actually watch the call, this is the video recording of the press conference that Governor Bullock gave. So you can take a look there. And then the last thing to share is something that Joe shared with me. This is another potential performer for the summer, but they are Play Music NYC, and they do a weekly adventure theater live session for young children. And so it's every Friday at 3 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is not the same in Mountain Time. My brain is kind of hurting right now.
What did you say it started? What time?
3:30. 4
Friday,
4 and 5:30. Wow, I'm
that'd
just
be
like
2
not.
o'clock and 3:30 Mountain Time.
Yes, 2 o'clock and 3:30 Mountain Time. So it's every Friday. You have to register by Wednesday, and it's donation based. So whatever you're willing to pay is what you would pay to attend the performance. And they have these virtual performances with children that engage storytelling and movement. So this is something that you can try out with your own family, or also send to your patrons and see if there are any families who are interested in doing this. So Adventure Theater Live.
I think I'll just add in, I think they will also do, they will schedule performances for individual organizations. Like this group does a birthday party thing, but I don't know that they have ever scheduled them specifically with libraries, but I just happen to know a performer who is involved with this group. She's born and raised here in East Glacier. She was part of the Missoula Children's Theater Troops back when, and there are several people in town who've been watching them and saying how wonderful they are, and I thought, I wonder if this would work for libraries. So I don't know, but I thought I would just share.
That's great. Montana connection. So I believe those were all of the resources that we had for you today. If you have any questions, if you have anything else that you would like to share, please do let us know. I will go ahead and stop the recording for now. Stop recording.